Hey y'all, I am back with some more dinner ideas. And first up, I'm gonna be making a quick version of orange chicken. That has been sounding so good to me lately. And on this specific night, I did not feel like breading the chicken. I really didn't even have the time. And plus, I purposefully wanted to make it a little bit lighter than normal. So I came across this recipe and I really wanted to give it a try. So I started by heating up a couple tablespoons of olive oil in my large skillet, and then I went ahead and dumped in about 2 pounds of some boneless, skinless chicken breast that I just diced up into bite-sized pieces, and I just simply seasoned those with some salt and pepper, and here I am just tossing it around to make sure that all that chicken is seasoned well, and I'm just going to let that fry up. It doesn't take long at all. So while that's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and make the orange sauce. So I have a half a cup of orange juice going into my mixing bowl, as well as a half a cup of honey. And I did spray that measuring cup with some Pam cooking spray before adding the honey. That way it could slide right on out. I'm also going to go in with a third cup of soy sauce. I'm just using the original, and I'm glad that I did. I was worried that it would be like too salty. I'm typically used to using low sodium in recipes, but it was perfect in this dish. I'm also going to do a quarter cup of some rice wine vinegar. And then I'm going to go in with 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. This is what's going to thicken the sauce. It's very important. And it didn't want to come out for whatever reason, so I'm just kind of tapping it with my finger. As for the spices, I'm going to do a half a teaspoon of some ground ginger, half a teaspoon of black pepper, and just a pinch of some crushed red pepper flakes. And then I did go in with a big spoonful of minced garlic, just using the stuff from a jar. And I did get that mixed up very well with my whisk. And then once that chicken was fully cooked through, I went ahead and added in all of that sauce. And then as soon as it starts to simmer, which only takes like maybe a minute, it's going to instantly start to thicken. So I'm just continuously stirring it for a couple of minutes, making sure that all of that chicken is coated. This chicken came out so tender, and that sauce was absolutely perfect. To go along with it, I also wanted some chow mein. Now, I wanted to make it from scratch, but when I went to Walmart, they were out of like half the ingredients to make it. So I stood in that aisle for too long trying to figure out what to do, and I came across these like street kitchen kits, and I've never seen these, I've never heard of it, but I figured I could try it out, let y'all know what we think. I did have to buy 2 because we're a family of 4, and each one said that it fed 2. So in my large skillet, I heated up a little bit of olive oil, and then I dumped in some chopped celery and some sliced cabbage. I already had those 2 ingredients in my fridge left over from previous recipes, so really that was my main inspiration for making this whole meal. But I just sauteed that around for, I'd say, a good 5 minutes. I still wanted it to have a little bit of a crunch to it. And I just added in 1 of those spice packets instead of the 2. And I'm glad that I did, because my husband and 2 kids did say that it was a little bit too spicy. That was their only complaint. So next time I would just sprinkle in a little bit of that packet. But if you are someone that really likes spice, including me, I love that personally, then that'll be great for you. So next, I'm adding in both packages of the noodles. It did say to run it under cold water first, which I did, but at first, I did not know how I was going to get these noodles broken apart. I thought this was going to be an epic fail, but I just walked away from it for a few minutes, and as that heat kind of went through the noodles, it made it a lot easier to kind of fall apart. I did decide to just add in 1 packet of the sauce instead of 2, because on the back of that package, it gives instructions on how to cook it with chicken. So since I already did that to the side and in a separate sauce, I knew that I didn't need both packets. So I just tossed everything together real good, let that sauce heat through, and I'm super pleased with how that looked. I mean, I think that looks really legit. And that and the chicken cooked up so quick, like much quicker than what I anticipated. So this is perfect for like a busy weeknight, and it definitely cured my craving. And the whole family really enjoyed it despite the noodles being a little bit too spicy. But overall, this dish was such a winner. Up next, I'm going to share one of our very favorite family recipes. This is going to be a baked pork chops and rice casserole. Now, I'm technically using pork tenderloin. This is the Uncle Charlie's. If you are local to me, you know how superior they are. They are our absolute favorite, but obviously you can use any type of pork chop, any store brand, doesn't really matter. But I am going to be using 8 because I know how much everyone in my house loves these, so I definitely wanted to make sure that there would be extra just in case anybody wanted extra. So I'm just seasoning both sides with some salt, pepper, and onion powder. I will, of course, do that to all of them. I do think that these pork chops that I have are brined because they're naturally a little bit salty, so I added very little salt to mine. Plus, I'm going to be adding in some cream soups, and we all know how much sodium is in those. But I did heat up a couple tablespoons of vegetable oil. I do have my heat on a higher heat because I'm only going to sear these for about a minute per side. I feel like that is all that it needs to get that beautiful brown crust that I'm looking for. You don't want to cook them all the way through because they're going to go in the oven for quite a while. And the recipe did state to do it for about 3 to 4 minutes per side, but in my case they would have been fully cooked through and then they would end up dry in the end, and nobody likes a dry pork chop. But I've got my 9x13 casserole dish out. I did spray it with some Pam first, and I'm just going to lay all of those seared pork chops in. I did have to kind of rearrange it here since it wasn't quite fitting. But now to a medium saucepan, I'm going to grab 1 can of this cream of mushroom with roasted garlic soup. And I'm also going to do 1 can of this cream of chicken with herbs. Now, obviously, you can use regular cream of chicken and regular cream of mushroom, but I really wanted to test this recipe out with these versions, and there is no turning back. It complements this so perfectly. I also mixed in 1.5 cups of milk, as well as 1 cup of some uncooked long grain rice. I did wash it first, and I'm also going to do 1 stick of butter. I took that on over to the stove and I heated it up to a low boil, and I'm just heating that until the butter is melted, and then I'm just going to simply pour that over top of those seared pork chops, and then with my whisk I'm just going to try to distribute that rice a little bit better so it's all equal and even. Now, the most important part is to make sure you've got some good quality heavy duty tin foil, and make sure that it is tightly covering your dish, or else that rice is not going to cook properly. And it goes in low and slow at 275 for 2 hours. When it comes out, I like to top it with parsley, and I like to serve it with some green beans and some rolls. This recipe is seriously so brag worthy. I'm so proud of it every single time that I make it. If there ever comes a day where I have a cookbook, this will 100% be in it. I wanted to show y'all how soft these pork chops are. It is just practically falling apart with my fork. And then this rice is just so creamy and flavorful. It is truly the perfect bite. If any of y'all decide to make this, please come back and let me know what y'all think of it. Up next is going to be another really quick dinner to make, and it blew all of us away. This is going to be a 1-pot taco spaghetti. Now, I've tried several different taco spaghettis in the past, and they're always good, but this one is definitely hands down our new favorite. Definitely unique and just so simple. So, to a big soup pot, I have browned up a pound of ground beef. I did season it with onion powder, salt, and pepper, and then once it was fully cooked through, I did dump in some minced garlic. You know, if you have a lot of grease, you'll definitely want to drain it. But I saute that for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to throw in about 2 tablespoons of this tomato paste. I just let that cook for a few minutes. I wanted to make sure that it was coating all of that beef and garlic. And plus, just anytime I use tomato paste in a recipe, I really like to cook it down. I feel like it deepens the flavor. I'm also going to grab 2 cans of Rotel, dump those in, juice and all. I always buy the mild version. I bought this big container of taco seasoning from Costco. We've really been liking it, so I won't have to buy the packages for a while, hopefully anyways. But I'm going to measure out a 1/4 cup of that, and then I'm just going to give that a quick stir before adding in some beef broth. So I did go ahead and measure out 3 cups, and I'm also going to do about a tablespoon of some Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to wait for this to come up to a boil, so I am going to turn the heat up a little bit, and then once it starts bubbling, I'm going to add in 12 ounces of spaghetti noodles. I did use a food scale scale for that because when it comes to pasta dishes, I like it to be accurate because I don't want it to be dry, and I am using thin spaghetti. So after I got all of the noodles pushed down into the liquid, I decided to add the rest of that beef broth. So basically, you just let that cook until the pasta is tender. It could take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. You definitely want to come in and give it a good stir, scrape the bottom a few times while it's cooking. And of course, you'll want to test the noodle before you can tell that it's done. So I added a couple cups of Mexican style shredded cheese, put that lid on there and left it alone for a few minutes. That way it can melt. And then I just came back and gave it a good stir. I did also prep some fresh cilantro, so I just tossed in about a handful of that, and then I'm just going to fold it in. And as you can see, that cheese is going to make it kind of creamy. That is it. So very easy to make, and it was just such a hit. My kids have been watching iCarly. And if you've ever watched that, you know that they make spaghetti tacos on the show. So my kids asked me to buy some of the hard shell tacos so that they could stuff their spaghetti into it. And they just love that. And I thought it was funny. But I did serve it as well with a little Caesar side salad. Went really well with it. But this was just so flavorful. I loved how easy it was. It is absolutely a new family favorite. My voice probably sounds muffled. I just had to walk out in the pouring rain to get an important package. I was on FaceTime with my husband because I could not lift it. So now my speaker is like full of water and I cannot fix it. I'm so sorry. I hope y'all can stick with me. But I did try out a new recipe this night. It's going to be a creamy lemon basil chicken. I thought that sounded amazing. I love that flavor combination, and just any dish that is citrusy is right up my alley. So I started off with 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts. I cut those in half to make 4 manageable pieces, the perfect portion for my family size. And per usual, just started off with a couple tablespoons of olive oil, let that skillet get nice and hot, and then I dropped in my chicken. I made sure that, the sides weren't touching too much, that way it could cook properly. And I am trying to fully cook this chicken during this step. So, it kind of depends on the thickness of your chicken. There's many different factors, but for me, it typically is around 4 to 5 minutes per side to fully cook it. So now that it's fully cooked, I'm going to transfer that to a plate and keep it warm with some tin foil. Got that covered up. Now to the same skillet, I'm going to drop in a big spoonful of minced garlic. I dumped in a teaspoon of some dried basil and a quarter teaspoon of onion powder. And I'm just going to, cook that for a little bit, scraping the bottom, getting all those flavorful bits up. And, if you have fresh basil, you could absolutely substitute that with the dried basil. Now, you need a half a cup of chicken broth. I don't know what happened here. Maybe I got burned. I can't even remember, but I lost a lot of that. So I probably have a little more than half a cup, and that's okay. So I'm just continuing on like nothing just happened. I'm going to give that a good stir. And then I'm going to measure out 3/4 of a cup of this heavy whipping cream, dumping that in, and I'm just going to get everything combined together. And you want to let this simmer until it thickens. So that can take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. The color of this is going to deepen. That is what you want. So we've reached that point. It's nice and thick. So now you need about 2 tablespoons of some fresh lemon juice. So I did use this whole lemon. It wasn't very juicy, as you can probably tell. So I might have had a little less, but it worked out. Lastly, I did season it to taste with some sea salt and black pepper. And now that lemon basil sauce is ready, I can go ahead and add back in my cooked chicken, as well as all of those juices that accumulated on that plate. And I just let that warm back through for, I don't know, just like a couple of minutes. And then I'm going to garnish it with some lemon wedges and then some dried parsley. I think that this dish is so beautiful. It smelled so good, and most importantly, it tasted so good. Love the creaminess, love the brightness. You could definitely serve this with rice or pasta. I chose to do some homemade mashed potatoes, and as you can see, I spooned plenty of that pan sauce over the potatoes as well as the chicken, and then I just paired it with some steamed broccoli. The whole family really loved this, and I just feel like it is the perfect dish for like spring and summer. Lastly, I'm going to be making a kielbasa potato soup. I've had this kielbasa in my freezer for a little while and I know that I wanted to use it up. I've also really been wanting some type of soup. It's one of my favorite things to make and I just haven't done it in a while. So I was trying to think of like the perfect soup that would be good this time of year, and this is what I came up with. So I started off by sauteing up some kielbasa that I previously sliced up. Just cooked it in some olive oil for about 5 to 6 minutes. You want it to get nice and brown, and then I'm just taking a slotted spoon. That way, as I pull it out, the grease can kind of drain out. So I'm just putting that in a paper towel lined bowl. And then I cut my veggies off camera, but you just need about 6 medium yellow potatoes. I peeled and chopped those, and then a stalk of celery and about 1 medium carrot. So you'll also need around 2 cups of frozen corn. I just use a small bag, so it's probably a little bit more. I season this heavily with onion powder and garlic powder, salt and pepper, pretty standard for me. And you also need 2 cups of chicken broth for this dish, so I'm just going to do water and chicken bouillon powder. And I also decided to use the last of my chicken stock that was in the fridge. So I wasn't too sure how 2 cups of broth was going to fully cook those potatoes, but it would have been just fine. But I'm going to give this a really good stir, and then I'm just going to let this come up to a boil, and then I will cover it with a lid and turn it down to a simmer. I let that simmer for about 15 minutes. You just want your vegetables to be tender, so here we are, everything's cooked nicely. So I'm going to add in 1.5 cups of milk, about a cup of some shredded sharp cheddar cheese, and then I'm also going to go ahead and dump back in that browned cooked sausage, as well as some parsley. And I just let this heat through for a few minutes. That way the cheese was melted and the milk was nice and hot. And that was it. Another extremely easy and super kid friendly dinner. My only complaint was I wish it was a little thicker. This was definitely on the thinner side, which some people prefer, but the flavors were on point. And I served it with some Cheesecake Factory rolls. I just picked those up at the bakery section at Walmart, and yeah, it was still a really good dinner. So that is going to wrap up this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that I was able to give you at least one idea. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll see y'all in my next one.